Jai Gurudev. Jai Masters. There are certain foundations of truth that are so simple they shouldn't need discussion, but we miss them. One of them is that your entire life is about what you're conscious of. None of your life is about what you're not conscious of. If something does not enter your awareness, doesn't enter your consciousness, either mentally or physically, it doesn't matter. If it doesn't enter your consciousness, it has no influence on you. That which you know absolutely nothing about, have never experienced, has zero influence. And the opposite is true. That which you experience in your consciousness regularly influences you. So this thing about consciousness, which is you are the conscious being who dwells inside, and then you experience things. I wish, in photography and creative arts, they talk about what's called negative space. That is, there's an object that you're photographing or making, and then there's the rest of the universe. That's truly what negative space is. Not object, very Zen, not object. And the negative space, of course, defines the object. Do you see that? Okay? If the negative space was exactly the color and shape of the object, you wouldn't see the object. So it is the same with your consciousness. We could focus on what has influenced you, but you already do that all the time. That's all you do, is focus on what's influenced you. It would be fun, I won't do it, but it would be fun to have an entire talk about what hasn't influenced you. But it would take a really long time. I sometimes challenge you by asking you, what percentage of what's going on, positive space versus negative space, what percentage of what's going on are you experiencing? Like right now, it's pretty interesting. You're here in this neat place and you're experiencing this. What are you missing? Everything else. That's the concept of negative space. But what you're missing is 99.99999999999% of what's going on, isn't it? Everywhere. I'm not talking about in Gainesville or Florida or on the planet Earth. Everywhere. That's your negative space. And this is just the situation you're experiencing. So you're taking in nothing. And that's what you're being influenced by, nothing. People are so busy with saying, I'm so influenced, he influenced me, that influenced me. Yes, it did. It narrowed you. Anything that influenced you destroyed your life, in truth. Because it made you become narrow to that, focused upon that event, which was a nothing event. At the same time that event was taking place, 700 billion zillion other events were taking place that you were not experiencing. So you're getting the drift. I can only talk around it, but it's very important, because otherwise you lose your entire life to the nothing that you've already experienced. And you don't pay attention to the fact that you missed everything. So therefore the mind naturally formulates the concept that it knows something. I'm a man of the world. No, you're not. You've only experienced the tiny amount that came into your consciousness that you were looking at that moment. So this thing that you've built up inside yourself, inside your mind, this notion that you know something, is the silliest thing in the whole world. You don't know anything. You only know the tiny little bit that has influenced your consciousness, has come into you. And you admit, that means you've missed everything, haven't you? So you start off with the humility. That's what that creates, is humility. That you don't know anything, and I mean anything. You don't know a thing about your wife, you don't know a thing about your husband, you don't know a thing about your boyfriend, you don't know a thing about anything and anything. You think you know somebody. There's no way you know somebody, not even close. That's why relationships are so difficult. People have been influenced by the experiences that passed before them as they went through life. You met them 3 weeks ago. They're 26 years old. They've been influenced by all of those experiences every single second for 26 years, and you've been influenced by the ones that went into you, and none of them are the same. Not even close. Period. The person sitting next to you is not having the same experience as you. All right? So this person that you met is very complex and very limited. Just think about it. They've missed everything except that tiny laser beam of what happened to be in front of them, even though all the rest was going on equally the same. And so now this person is this complex mix of these limited experiences, albeit them limited, this the ones they experienced, and you're this complex mix of this totally unique set of experiences that you've had, and now you've known each other for 3 weeks and you feel like you know them. That's really very funny. You don't know them. You don't know what you did when you knew them? This is what happened. You had all your experiences, then they became one of your experiences. And so they came in and you intermeshed them into your experiences. And that's what you mean when you say, I know them. I feel like I've known him forever. No, you haven't known him, and you don't know him, and you will never know him, ever. Why? Because when you're not with him, he's having different experiences even now. And a person is just, Skinner said, a person is a sum of their learned experiences. It's not what a person is, but that's what your mind is. You are the consciousness that's in there, aware that you have a very, very restricted and limited mind that is limited to what has influenced you over the course of your life, which, like I said, be honest, is nothing. So you start with the humility of realizing this is the way it is. We talk about witness consciousness. All it means, seriously, people make a big deal out of this thing. All witness consciousness means is, I am in here, I'm conscious, I'm aware. I don't have to try, I'm aware. You in there? Hi, I thought so. All right, I am aware in here. There are things going on in here that I am aware of. These thoughts that my mind creates, these emotions that my heart creates, and a world unfolds in front of me. Those are the objects that you are conscious of. They are very limited, but they are the ones you experience. Your thoughts are the sum of the learned experiences that have influenced them. There's nothing good about your thoughts, nothing bad about your thoughts. If you had different experiences, you would have different thoughts. And your experiences are totally random. They're just what happens to unfold in front of you. If you saw a car accident when you were 3 years old, you looked out the window, you saw a car accident and there was really a lot of mess out there. And it left a deep impression on you. Now you don't drive, you don't let your kids drive. It influenced you. I always tell the story. If your little sister had distracted you, hey, Peter, look over here, and you look the other way while you were driving by, you're telling me your entire life is different? Okay, I hope that makes you feel pretty weird. That's weird. You have these influences that have left impressions on your mind. Now you are the consciousness that is destined, if you will, to listen to what your mind creates because of the influences it had. If you doubt that you would be different if you had different influences, different experiences, I can prove it to you easily, because today you give me your opinions, you do everything, you tell me what you like and what you don't like, so get it all down, and then you go outside and you have an experience. Somebody tells you something you didn't know. Somebody does something you didn't expect. One experience. You want to tell me it's not going to change how you see things? It's not going to change what your mind says, whether you like people or don't like people or anything like that? It's pretty big. There are people that are married, that love people, that have long-term relationships. Then they find out something about their past, and they don't like them anymore. Don't blush. It's embarrassing, but it's true, isn't it? There are people who grew up with their parents, and they're now 19, 20, 25 years old. And the parents get together and decide, well, we should tell Johnny that he's adopted. And then the parents sit down with Johnny, and that's it for Johnny. He goes south. He's weird. He's like a totally different person. Everything changed because of one piece of information. That is the power of influence. That is what your mind is doing. It is taking in these impressions, trying to digest them and put them together into some model of understanding, even though it only got so little bit of information, tries to figure it all out. And when one more piece of information comes in, the mind changes. And now you're sitting in there watching, witnessing, witness conscious, you're witnessing a mind that is now telling you different things. Before it told you, oh, I can't wait till he comes over to see me, I'm so excited. And all of a sudden, I don't want to see him, I hope he doesn't come. Has it ever happened to you? It is so neat to watch this. And that's what witness consciousness does for you. Witness consciousness is simply sitting there saying, I am not the mind. I have a mind, but I am not the mind. The mind is the sum of the learned experiences. It takes the learned experiences, takes them all in, and then tries to make them make sense You try to make the experiences you had make sense inside of you, and he does and she does, et cetera, et cetera. And it's called rationalization. You take these thoughts, you rationalize them all out, and end up with a concept of how things are and so on. It's tough to live in there when you've done that. Why? Because what you have in there is not truth. What you have in there is nothing. It's a couple of pieces of data that you built a whole world around, and there's 800 billion more pieces of data that you don't have. Therefore, you got nothing. I'm a computer guy. I know. It's only as good as the data. Put in the wrong data, you get wrong stuff out. If you put in meaningless data, you get meaningless stuff out. You have meaningless data in there. And you've built a whole model of the world and of people and of things and of you and of everything based upon that. So your mind will now talk about that. It will tell you what you like, what you don't like, what you want to happen, what you don't want to happen, what freaks you out, what turns you on. Just every single thing it says is just the sum of the learned experiences that have left impressions upon it. And so now it's going to regurgitate that and talk to you. When you sit in witness consciousness, I'm going to start to talk about what I want to talk about. When you sit in what's called witness consciousness, it means I am aware that my mind is doing this. I don't have to think about it. Just like if I look at the wall, I see the pictures. I don't have to think in order to see the pictures, do I? It's very important. I just open my eyes and they're there. They come in because they're there. Your mind is there. You see it. You're aware of it. You don't have to think about it. Witness consciousness is not a state of, I wonder if I'm witnessing. I wonder if I'm seeing the picture. No, you're not doing anything with your mind. You're just noticing that there is something happening before your consciousness, which is a mind that you someday, if you watch long enough, you'll catch on, is doing nothing but regurgitating the sum of its learned experiences. That's all it's doing. It's just spitting back out some combination of the data that's in there. All right? And put one more piece of data, spit out something different. It's the funniest thing in the world. And it has absolutely nothing to do with you. Nothing. Zero. Nothing. There's not a single thing that mind says that is any different than anything else it says. It's just a talking machine in there that has taken, it's like a computer that took in this data and now it's putting it and talking about it and giving you its opinion about things and so on. You are the consciousness that is aware. If I asked you right now, are you aware that your mind is doing this? I can tell from the way you're looking at me that you're stunned and yeah, that's what it does. It doesn't do anything else. It just puts that together. Now, if you watch a little bit longer from the seat of witness, I'll do it for you because most people can't watch objectively. Why? Because they're too invested in it. They really think that what the mind has to say matters. It doesn't. It's meaningless. Might as well take an 8-ball and just turn maybe, yes, no, right? It's just meaningless chatter that it's doing in there. Now, I'm separating what I call the personal mind. This is the personal mind. That's the sum of your learned experiences from the intellectual mind, the abstract mind, the impersonal mind. What is the difference? People say, oh, that's like people write books and they're saying the personal and the impersonal mind. We don't need books. This is how easy it is. You have the ability to willfully make your mind think about what you want. I want you to think about Saturn. In fact, I want you to see Saturn right now with all its rings. I want you to think about what spacecraft was it that we sent to Saturn. I don't care if you know or not, just think about it. Your mind will think about what you tell it to if you do it. Write 2 + 2 = do it. Literally write it in there. Make the mind write the right answer down. You have the right to use your mind. You are in there. The same you that I say, hi, are you in there, can make your mind do these things. It's called an assertion of will. You have the power of will. You can assert your will, and your mind will do what you tell it to do. I'm going to call that the impersonal mind. I'm going to call that the intellectual mind. I'm going to call that the abstract mind. It abstracts from what's coming in from the outside world, and you get this. It's a blank computer. You get to use it for what you want. What percentage of the time, you don't know this, but you'll come back in a couple of weeks and you'll have watched, what percentage of the time are you making your mind do what it does versus it's doing it by itself? Nobody ever asked you that before, did they? What you're going to find out is it's tiny. Like, for example, watch your mind do this. Where is he? He said he would call. I hope he's okay. What if he got in an accident? He better not be with somebody else. Right? Are you making your mind do that? Or is your mind doing that to you? You hear me? You know how you can test? Try stopping it. So the mind, because it's full of this stuff that you picked up and you built this whole model, expresses that model day and night, all the time. It just, even when you're sleeping, your dreams are that. Ask Freud, he'll tell you. The experiences that you had during your day will come back up at night. Or the experiences you had that were traumatic when you were 4 will come back up at night. All right? That's where this stuff comes from. It is the mind trying to release the energy built up from these experiences that you stored inside, from the impressions of some scars, we call them in yoga, from the impressions that got left inside of you. That is what's going on during the day. The mind is just being active to try and release the energies that you stored inside, because you stored all these impressions, especially the negative ones, need to release, and you won't let them release. And so they find ways to talk about things and release and so on. I don't need to teach you this. You live in there. You should be able to watch this. So the personal mind is the one that is talking about the personal experiences that you've had, which I already told you are meaningless, and they're totally different than everybody else's, and they just happened to be what was in front of you. You stored them inside, and they became the foundation of your personal mind. You also have an intellectual mind where you can do analytics, you can do memory, you can do different things like a computer when you are using your mind, when you willfully use your mind. But you're going to find out that if I were to measure the difference between how often you're actually using your mind versus your mind is giving you trouble. Your mind's like you're driving down the road. Why don't you just enjoy the trees or the road? You don't stand a chance. Where am I going? I wonder what I do. I hope she likes me. Oh my God. Just watch. Please, I beg you. Don't do anything about it. Don't analyze it. Don't try to figure it out. Don't try to stop it. Your first step is to watch. Start to notice what your mind is doing, and you see whether it's true or not that it does it by itself. If you want to really find out that you're not using your mind, it goes on by itself, in case you don't believe me, do that thing. What's it called? Oh, meditate. Try to meditate. Why would I try to meditate? If for no other reason to prove to yourself that you can't. Okay? Sit down and decide for 15 minutes, my mind is not going to go on by itself. It's only going to work when I tell it to. And for these 15 minutes, I signed a pledge to myself that I'm not going to use my mind for these 15 minutes. I mean, come on. You can not eat for 15 minutes. Not easy, but you can, right? You cannot smoke for 15 minutes. You cannot do all kinds of things for 15 minutes. Why don't you just decide, I'm not going to willfully use my mind and make it think for 15 minutes. And then see what happens during those 15 minutes. Because you're going to find out the mind does not shut up. If left to its own, it's going to continue thinking about what you should be doing instead of sitting here. This is stupid because it's not working anyways. Plus, there's nobody talking in here. That's like I've had people tell me, there's nobody talking. I don't know what he's talking about. I don't hear any voice. There's nothing in here. Okay? So you get this basics that the mind is a thing in and of itself. It is like an appliance. It is a thought-creating machine. And it creates thoughts based upon the data that has been put into it, and the data are the experiences you've had. That's why your thoughts are totally different than everybody else's. It's neat. It's at least the humility you get from this is next time your mind says, how could he do that? I could never do that. Of course not. You've had totally different programming. Therefore, it makes no sense to you that somebody could ever do that. And what you're doing makes no sense to them. That's why it says, judge not that you shall not be judged. All right? Because it's the silliest thing in the world to sit there and take your mind that is based upon your experiences, and how dare you look at another person? Because what's going on in their mind has nothing to do. But you're both doing the same thing. You're listening to your minds. You're all exactly the same. Republicans, Democrats, this, that, everything. Male, female, young, old, sick, healthy. It doesn't matter. You're all doing the exact same thing. What do you mean? Doesn't look like it. Yes, you're all listening to your minds. That's a very beautiful place to get. That's all anyone's doing in there is listening to their minds, aren't you? Your mind tells you stuff, doesn't it? You tend to listen to it. Where did the mind come from? I already explained it to you. Didn't take books, did it? It's just some of your learned experiences. These experiences have come in. Now your mind says different things. And when you reach witness consciousness, it merely means that you are able to maintain a center of being that is outside the mind. You are watching the mind. The best example I can give you is you sit down to watch TV. There's other things going on in the room. There's people, there's food, there's this and that. You're kind of lightly, tangentially looking at the TV. Every once in a while you notice what's on the TV. Okay? That's fine. The TV is one of the objects in the room. People, food, or other objects in the room. They're all even. Then all of a sudden something comes on the TV that interests you. And I mean seriously interests you. All of a sudden there's nothing going into your consciousness but what is on that TV. There's no one else in the room. You don't have a family. You don't have a house anywhere. You have no past. Your entire consciousness is absorbed in what's going on in the TV. Ever been there? Okay. Because you are the consciousness. If your consciousness becomes fixated on a given object, I'm telling you there is no other object. I mean, there is, but not to you, because you are only experiencing what's coming into your consciousness. So when you watch the TV so thoroughly, it becomes your life. That's the end of you. It is the same thing with your mind. If everything your mind says seems so important to you, oh, why did I say that? Oh my God, now I'm really embarrassed. I hope I don't ever see him again. I don't even want to come back to this school. I can't, they all laughed at me. What is that? Mind. It's just mind talking, all right? It had an experience, and now the mind is talking. What witness consciousness says is, I've been there, I've done that. I've gotten sucked into the TV and missed my life. I'm not doing it anymore. I'm going to sit here, this is deep, and notice the tendency of the mind to be weird. Notice the tendency of the mind to be the sum of the learned experiences, with the biggest one being what just happened. All right? It gives total weight to the latest one that happened versus all that it collected before. And then that settles in and it changes. Look, it changes, right? Isn't that amazing? It's just amazing. You have to watch it. Don't be afraid of it. Watch it. And you realize you're capable of watching it. You are the consciousness that is aware of the mind. You are the person sitting on the couch looking at the TV. You are not the TV. You are not what's on the TV. You are the being sitting on the couch who just got sucked into the TV for a minute. Now you're back on the couch. All right? That's called waking up. That's literally, that example we just used, that is what self-realization is. You were on the couch, now you're sucked in the TV, you lost yourself. You don't even know who you are. You're not on the couch anymore. You're in the TV show, right? All of a sudden the commercial comes on, it ceases to catch your attention, and you're back on the couch. Now all of a sudden there's a whole room. There's a whole world that you missed. That's what happens when you wake up. You come back to the seat of awareness that was so fixated on what the mind was saying that you lost all sense of yourself because you got sucked into the TV show of you. That is the personal mind. You guys are getting something very deep. The concept of personal mind is a very important thing to understand. There's nothing wrong with mind. Mind is a computer. It's brilliant. It's wonderful. It's what you're doing with it. There's nothing wrong with the TV. But if you get sucked into it and don't feed the kids and leave your entire life away, it's not doing too good, is it? So the same thing is happening with your mind. So the question becomes, what do I do about it? Once you start realizing, I got a problem here, my mind thinks it knows what it's talking about, and it's highly influenced by the input that came in, and it's totally skewed from reality, because reality is 700 billion other things are happening in the universe, and they're all the same. They're just what's happening. Who will look at me? I know it's embarrassing. There's a creation out there. It's going on. It's been going on for 13.8 billion years. Every single bit of it is the same. It's just what's happening. And you happen to see the part that's in front of you. But it came into your mind, influenced it, and your mind changed this whole talk, didn't it? Just completely changed this talk, and now you're in trouble. You're not in trouble because your mind did that. You're in trouble because you're paying attention to the mind. And that becomes your understanding of how to get out. First of all, can you get out? Yes. What's it like out? Beautiful. What do you mean? It's beautiful. It's just like when you stop watching the horror movie on TV, there's a whole world. You can go wherever you want. You're awake. All right? You can enjoy your life. Right? It's the same thing here. If you're staring at your mind, I am telling you, you're in trouble. That's why Buddha said all life is suffering. I guarantee you, if you're staring at your mind, you are in trouble. I don't care if you're rich, I don't care if you're poor, I don't care if you're male, female, sick, healthy, in relationship, not in relationship, married 30 years, never married, doesn't matter. If you're staring at that mind, you are in big trouble. Because at any moment, and you know it, something could happen or not happen, and it goes south. It just starts changing its rap instantaneously, won't it? And you know that. You know that. Every one of you know how dangerous that is, don't you? And so what you do is you go out there and you attempt to manipulate the world outside of you so that it doesn't have influences that cause your mind to freak out. And if you're not careful, that is how you'll spend the rest of your life. And a lot of you guys are young, and I don't want you to. Do you understand that? Because you do not have to live like that. Do you see that tendency to feel like you have to manipulate and control people, places, and things around you so they behave and act in ways that are comfortable to you instead of in ways that cause you trouble inside? All right? And that's how you end up living your life. That's called a fearful life. You're at war with what's in front of you because you're scared to death. Most people run around their lives deep inside scared to death. Scared that someone will do something, somebody won't do something, something will happen, something won't happen that causes disturbance inside. And then they won't be okay. And so what they need to do is invest their energies and find out that's why we're control freaks. Some people say, I have control issues. Which one of you don't have control issues? There's nobody doesn't have control issues. That's what you need to do, is control the moments in front of you so that when they come in, they fit what's going on inside already. And they don't cause all kinds of disturbance. And that goes for every word somebody says. Somebody tells you, she said that he heard him say that he thought he didn't like you. You're in trouble. I swear to God. I even said it, you turned white. Right? It's like you can't even handle what you think somebody is thinking. So these inputs that come in can cause a lot of trouble. And because you don't want that, you end up living a life of stress, a life of anxiety. That's what it boils down to. Tension. That's where tension comes from, is that you feel the need to control the events around you so that they don't disturb you. There is another life to be lived. It is completely different than that. You can live it in the same place, the same situations, but you're living a different life. What is that? I said to you in the beginning that what happened is you've taken all these influences and you developed an entire model of reality inside your head based upon what isn't reality. You've just based upon the experiences you've had. That is not reality. It's just the tiniest piece of things, so it's not reality. Reality is the whole. Reality is not the tiny part that you've experienced. There is a way to live in which you don't hang out with that part of yourself. You don't look at your mind and say, oh my God, tell me what needs to happen so I'll be okay. Tell me how everybody else needs to be so I'll be okay. You look at the mind, you realize it doesn't know what it's talking about. It's just the sum of its learned experiences. And I'm not going to listen. You can learn to not listen to that part of your mind. You don't have to shut it up. You don't have to fight with it. There is a natural tendency that the experiences you've had are going to get stuck in your mind, to store in your mind. They're going to create noise. They're going to create these impressions that make all this noise inside your head. You can spend your life trying to make the world be what matches it. I don't advise that. You can spend your life trying to shut your mind up so that it doesn't do those things. That's very unnatural. Or you can decide not to listen. And that's what true witness consciousness leads to, where you look at your mind and you realize it doesn't know what it's talking about. It shows you that all the time, but you're not paying attention. Somebody's late. Somebody's supposed to call you at a certain time, come home at a certain time. And for 15 minutes, you've got this period of time where you don't know what's going on. Will you watch how many iterations your mind goes through trying to figure out what's going on? And then the person comes home and finds out I had a flat tire or some innocuous thing took place. Do you sit your mind down and scold it and say, look what you did. You created hell for me for 15 minutes. No, you don't. You just accept that it did that. All right? A wise person wouldn't do that. They look at it over time. It takes time to mature into this. And you realize, ready? It doesn't know what it's talking about. The personal mind has no idea what's going on. It can't. It only knows about itself, and then it projects itself onto everything else. And it's never right. Never. Anytime you think you know why somebody said something, you don't. Anytime you know why somebody did something, you don't. Because what you're doing is saying, why would I have done that? Because that's the only data you have. And so you make up all this stuff. And believe it or not, it is easier to live life not doing that. It is easier to come into life and say, a moment is unfolding in front of me. Yes, my mind has this tendency, it does. It has a tendency to talk about it, has a tendency to judge it, has a tendency to see whether it likes it or doesn't like it, etc., etc. But you've realized that doesn't lead you anywhere. Like that, you'll find out eventually that one of the silliest things you ever do inside your head is decide that you don't like something. Especially if it already happened. Let's talk about it for a second. The event happened, you experienced it, and now you've decided you don't like it. What good does that do you? How do you feel now that you don't like it? You feel terrible. How would you feel if you did like it? Wonderful. Then like it. What is the benefit of not liking something? I'm talking about somebody, something, anything, especially events that already happened, because then you can't change them. They already happened. Does that make sense? I want to just be sensible to you. Some people say spirituality is not sensible. It is sensible. Normal people are doing is not sensible at all, right? I don't like what my ex did. Well, he's your ex. Why are you still don't like it? I don't like that my parents got divorced when I was 6. Okay, well, you're 43 years old. There's all kinds of stuff you don't like that happened, aren't there? All right? What good is that doing you? I mean, I want to ask you, how does it make you feel? It's terrible. It messes you up. You are the one who's deciding whether you like things or not. Why would you hurt yourself by deciding you don't like it? Why don't you just decide you do like it? I was very upset that my parents got divorced 40 years ago. You know, I've decided it was good. I got to meet my stepfather. I got to have 2 fathers. Everybody else only had 1. And you just make your mind up. Put another influence into your mind. What? Your influence. Really, that's what it's about. The thing built itself without anybody being home. There were no grown-ups around. It just took the influences and put them together when you were sick. And the stuff came in there, and you stored all the stuff you didn't like, and now you have all these influences. All you have to do is decide, I like it. At least start now. These are your techniques, how you work with yourself. Do not let your mind tell you don't like something. It's just telling you that. You just decide, I like it. You're much better off. So I can give you many techniques. You start this process of realizing, I am not my mind. My mind is the sum of the learned experiences that I've picked up over my life. That is meaningless. If I'd had different ones, my mind would be saying something different. So why am I listening to it? And you start the practice of learning how to not listen to your mind. You don't have to fight with it. You don't have to argue with it. You don't have to prove it wrong. You just simply say, you talk, me no listen. And that's what's called letting go. That's very deep spirituality. We got there sideways, but this is very deep. In other words, your highest practice, which is what you do in meditation, is to sit there and take your consciousness off of your mind. I told you, I started the talk by saying your whole life is only about what comes into your consciousness. And right now your whole life is about your mind, because that's what comes into your consciousness more than anything else. You can't even walk outside and see the trees or the animals or anything without your mind talking about it. Try it sometime. Why does it need to talk about it? Right? It's just, I saw a tree. Why is it? Oh, there's a tree. I talk about that in Untethered Soul. I start off that way, right? Why is it narrating? You see somebody. Oh, there's Frank. Why does it say that? I already know it's Frank. I already saw him. And you start realizing you can't go anywhere without your mind completely overwhelming your consciousness. And if you'll listen to your mind doing that, then you listen to your mind when it says, there's Frank, I don't like him. Now how do you feel? Yicky. I told you, dare. What if it said, there's Frank, I like him? How would you feel? Well, why can't it say I like him? Why does it have to say I don't like him? Because the sum of your learned experiences are negative. You've had lots of negative experiences. You've had lots of things happen in life that weren't pleasant to you. And you stored all of them inside. And what you have stored inside your mind now is a collection, a storehouse of experiences that you didn't like. And so now, because there's all that stored in there, when a new experience happens, it stimulates that stuff. And it tends to come up with negativity. So what you do to get out of this other life we talk about, is you practice not listening to your mind. So let's talk about basic meditation techniques. The most basic of all meditation techniques, 15 minutes in the morning, 15 minutes in the evening. Try to do it at the same time each day and do it regularly, right? It's important. It's your life. What you're doing is learning to liberate yourself. You're learning to free yourself from this. And so the most basic techniques, I don't teach meditation, but the most basic techniques they teach is to follow your breath. I love when somebody comes to me and says, well, why would I watch my breath? What's so special about my breath? The answer is nothing. There's nothing special about your breath. It's just that if you weren't watching your breath, you'd be watching your mind. That's how you should look at meditation. I don't want to give it spiritual meaning. I don't want you having blue pearls and see different lights. I don't care. I want you to learn to not watch your mind, just like you'd learn to play tennis, learn to play the piano. You practice. That's how you should see meditation. It's my practice time to see if I can withdraw my consciousness from its addiction to listening to what the stupid mind is saying. So you start watching your breath go in and out. If you want, you can count. It's pretty innocuous. I'd rather have my mind count than say the rest of the thing it says. How about you? That would be much more enjoyable. So you just breathe in 1, 2, 3, 4, and you won't get past 4. Come and tell me if you get past 4. Then I'm going to find out you didn't get past 4. What are you doing? You're listening to your mind. Good. Play your scales. This is how I want you to see it. Sit down to play your piano. You've never played before. They're going to start you with scales. All right? And you start playing your scales. You make a mistake. So what? That's what you're there for. If you're sitting there and you're counting, and the next thing you know, you're thinking about Frank or George, or what are you going to do when you get up? Or why am I sitting here? Where was I? I didn't think this. That means you went to your mind. Doesn't matter what it said. It doesn't make any difference what the mind said that drew your consciousness into it. Don't get into thinking about why you thought about it. And getting mad at yourself. That's just mine too. Oh my God, what's wrong with me? I didn't get past 4. No, that's mine too. Does it make sense to you? That's all just mind talking. You are the one who's in there noticing that the mind is talking and you started listening. Just come back to the breath. Just come back. So I love that you can learn meditation this way, right? Take away all the lights and colors and just sit there and say, it is like playing your scales. You are learning to put your consciousness on something other than the talking head that's going on inside of you. But you won't do it until you've practiced witness consciousness enough to see how dangerous that mind is. It has ruined your life so far. And everybody else is around you. Just watch what it does in your relationships. That alone is hilarious, right? Oh, I really like him, right? Oh, look what he's wearing. Oh, I could never go with somebody like that, right? Oh, well, that's kind of interesting. Didn't do that. Come on. He's so cute. It's adorable. You have to get to laugh at it and realize if you listen to it, you're in big trouble. Because it keeps going back and forth, doesn't it? Watch it try to make a decision. And fun making decisions, the mind, okay? This is how a wise person deals with their mind when it comes time to make a decision. Ready? We sit down. Oh, mind. Mind. Pay attention. Should I marry this person? And he says, I don't know. That's the end of the discussion. He said he didn't know. That's not what you do. He says, I don't know. He says, well, if I could think about it then. Well, I already told you I don't know. If I don't know, I don't know. If it tells you I don't know, why don't you listen to it? It doesn't know. But instead you think about it. You make all these possibilities and you try. What are you actually doing with your mind when you're trying to make a decision like that? You're actually trying to create in your mind what you think the situation might be and trying to see what it feels like. Well, I could marry him. What it would be like to wake up in the morning. And it would be nice to have somebody around the house. And, oh, it could fix it. The fix it guy's handy with good hands. Plus he's in medical school. By the time he gets his degree, he'll wake up some good money. And it just tries these different situations on, like trying on clothes, isn't it? Is it any different than trying on clothes and then standing in front of a mirror and turning around and see what it feels like? You're literally trying on these things your mind thinks about and then trying to see how your mind feels about them. I can't even talk about it anymore. It's the silliest thing I ever heard of. And then the minute you just, oh, yes, I like it, it'll change its mind in a New York second, won't it? Or one more piece of information, right? Oh, well, what are we going to do, right? Is religion not the same in mind? Well, we bring the kids up. Oh, I don't know what's wrong. I can't do it. Yes or no? And then you go back and back and back. So you eventually catch on that this mind of yours, the personal mind, not the intellectual mind. The intellectual mind is a very powerful thing, right? It developed air conditioning. I like it. It flew us to the moon. I think that's exciting. It split the atom. It figured out the quantum field. It's a pretty neat thing, the intellectual mind. Not one bit of that is personal. That is using the creative, analytical mind for what it was meant for. But when you come in here and take your data and figure out a world inside of how it needs to be for you to be okay, and then try to figure out what to do about it, you're going to find out that you go pretty weird. It gets pretty uncomfortable in there. You wake up in the morning scared you might do something wrong or say something wrong, right? Look back at the past. It gets pretty scary, all right? And it's perfectly reasonable that it be scary, by the way, because what you've done is made up a world inside your head based on your past experiences and decided if it's that way, I'll be okay. And then you walked out into a world that has nothing to do with you. It has to do with itself. It's manifesting based on the laws of physics and so on. And so the fear that it might not be the way you want is actually very rational. And so what you decide to do is learn to take your consciousness off of the talking head. That's all. It's that simple. And you do that. One way to do that is meditation. So you breathe in and out. You count. Just do it short periods of time. At first you won't be able to do it. Then you'll do better, just like everything else, just like you learn. And then what you're going to find out, if you do even that simple act. I love that most of the teachings nowadays are 15 minutes morning, 15 minutes evening, right? It will change your life. It's not about going to altered states. It's about not listening to your mind. When you learn to not listen to your mind, everything is going to change. Just like when you stop staring at the TV, there's a whole other life to be had, isn't there? Because your consciousnness did not get absorbed in the TV. I can't even hardly explain to you or describe the life that happens when you stop listening to yourself. It's the funniest thing in the world. All of a sudden, everything's fine. It's not because of some law of attraction that you've attracted nice things to yourself. It's because you stop defining how things need to be for you to be okay. And then, of course, they're not that way. If you don't define how they need to be, they're fascinating the way they are. Every person is fascinating. The weather is fascinating, all of it. Rain is fascinating. Hot is fascinating. Cold, everything's fascinating. It's an experience that you're having without judging. And because you're having the experience, it hits you very deep. This is what it's like. Right now, you only have rich moments every once in a while. You know, you turn, you see the sunset, it blows you away and it touches you to the core of your being. Or somebody hugs you who you love and you have this intimate moment where you melt. That's because you're allowing the experience to get past your mind. If somebody's hugging you and you're sitting there saying, well, I don't know, hope they don't squeeze me too tight. If that's going on, you're not having a very nice hug. And also, by the way, if you turn and you see the sunset and your mind is saying, yeah, it's nice, but I've seen nicer ones. I saw one, remember when I was little? You're not having a nice experience. Your mind is destroying your life. It's standing in between you, the consciousness, and the experience you're having, judging, talking, interfering, creating static. It is the moments where that's not happening that you're having deep experiences. You live for those. You understand that? You call them spiritual. Like, oh my God, the sunset was so beautiful. I felt like I was in the presence of God. You were, but not because of the sunset, because it touched your being, and that's the presence of God inside of you. It came all the way in and touched your soul, your consciousness. So does the hug. So does holding your baby for the first time. But those are very far between. It's not, I'm asking the following. Let's hit this straight. I'll look you in the eyes. That which you feel when the sunset is just right and it gets all the way in, or when you're in somebody's arms in that intimate moment and just perfect and you're melting completely, or you're holding your baby for the first time, that experience you're having, I want you to have it every second of your life. Not 4 times during your life. Every second of your life should be like that. Because it's not the experience that matters. It's the experiencing of the experience that matters. It was because you liked this person that when they hugged you, you opened and allowed it in. If you didn't like the person, you'd call the police. It would not be a nice experience. It's because you're open, right? Or if you had just tried to buy a house in Hawaii that faced the sunset, and just before you closed, somebody came in and swept it away, you didn't get it. Now you're back home and you turn the corner, there's this sunset. It depresses you. I could have watched it every night. Now I'll never see it. Yes or no? Your mind is keeping you from experiencing the experience. It's reacting to the experience. It's talking about the experience. It's judging the experience. Therefore, you are experiencing your mind doing its thing instead of you experiencing the experience itself. This is the deepest thing I can ever teach you, all right? But when you don't do that, when you have those rare moments, or Maslow called them peak experiences, you have those rare moments where what is you are experiencing is touching the experiencer. And you're feeling this wholeness and this oneness and this peace and beauty. You can have that all the time if you will learn not to listen to your mind. If you will thin the mind out, more things will come in and touch you. Right now, when you see your child laughing and playing, it melts your heart. I want it to be when you see every child, any child laughing and playing, it melts your heart exactly as much. And don't you doubt you can reach that state. The only reason it happens, there's nothing different in your child than any other. The difference is what your mind is doing about it. Your mind is saying, oh, look at Sally playing. It doesn't do it about the other kids. If your mind shut up, each experience would come in and touch you. So your mind's not going to shut up to start with, right? Why? Because it is trying to figure out how everything needs to be for you to be okay. Why is it doing that? You told it to. You literally told your mind to think day and night about how everybody and everything needs to be. Figure it all out. You're thinking about when I'm 64, when you're 20 years old, right? You're trying to plan it all out because you're afraid. Because you're afraid something will happen that doesn't fit well in there. And so you asked your mind like a shield to protect you by figuring out how it needs to be for me to be okay, and then figure out how to make it be that way, and that's your entire life. Okay? So nothing gets in anymore because it's all judged based on the reaction of the mind. The answer is not to fight with yourself, is not to fight with the world, is not to shut the mind up. It's to learn to not listen. The answer is to learn to move your consciousness to something other than the talking head. So meditation is one way of doing that. Now you see how meditation would work? If you take that time and practice, what's going to happen is you'll get good at it. You'll get good at it. You'll notice that your consciousness can stay focused on your breath, and if you're counting, that it can count to 20, then come back. You have to come back because I want you to be conscious enough to bring it back, to start counting over again. And so you're aware, you're centered, you're clear, right? And you're going to come back and you say, Jai, all I did was watch my breath and I feel so peaceful. You're damn right you do, because you didn't watch your mind. It's as simple as that. Maybe other than your mind, there's nothing but peace back there. Remember I said if you're not watching the TV, you're in the room, you got all kinds of stuff going on. What's it like if you're not watching the mind? Do you know how few people know the answer to that question? Where do you find out? It's beautiful all the time. All the time. Every single experience that unfolds in front of you is a miracle. It's a gift. It's an experience. Would you rather be nothing? Would you rather be in outer space and there's just black, empty space? You have no experiences? Of course not. So you're being given the gift of the experience. But what if the experience I don't want? That's your problem. You're the one who decided what you wanted or didn't want. Eventually you stop doing that. You stop saying, okay, I have the right to enjoy and appreciate and respect and learn from the experience that's unfolding in front of me. But I don't have the right to decide what experience is unfolding in front of me, right? It's big. It's the result of all the forces that cause it to be. And I'm just here to experience it. When the mind is not complaining about it, when you're not listening to the judgment of your mind, you will find that every single experience has something to teach you. It can touch you in a different way, just like all music is different. Every note on the piano is different. One's not better than another. It takes all the notes to make a concert, a piece, right? It takes every note of life to make you wholer. If you had your way, you'd only keep having the same experience over and over again that you liked. And you'd never have the experience you don't like. It's bad enough that you're so limited to how many experiences you have anyways. Now you don't even want to have the ones you're having. It's so funny. You'd like to just get stuck in one given one that doesn't bother you. So a wise person just looks at that mind, understands what I'm saying, and first you have to watch for a while. Just watch for a while and see if it's true what I said, that the mind's a problem, that it's not telling you nice things. It's like a horror show. It's freaking you out, okay? You have to give a public talk. It says, oh, you're going to blow this. You know you'll blow this. Oh, my God, you're going to get so embarrassed. I don't want to do that. Anybody's mind do that? Okay, well, isn't that nice of it? No, it's not nice, and I don't want you listening to that. But it's going to do it because that's the sum of your learned experiences. You don't have to listen. So if you will practice, for example, we talk about meditation. What is mantra? Mantra is taking a benign word. You want it to be a name of God, take a name of God. You want it to be peace, love, I don't care. Just take a benign word. It has to be more of a neutral thing that doesn't stimulate thoughts. You just do whatever you want, but pick a word and then start training your mind. Just train your mind to say it. Well, why would I do that? So that when your mind is saying the other things it says, you have the option of putting your consciousness here. If you'll do it, your mind, look, your mind sometimes plays songs. It won't stop, right? They get in your head. You can get a word in your head, right? I used to just say, I don't do it anymore, but I used to say God. I just God, 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 God. And pretty soon the mind's saying God, God. It doesn't know what it's saying, but it's just saying it, God, God. And then it starts saying, well, what if she doesn't like me? I have a choice. I can listen to what if she doesn't like me? Should I still? God, God. See the power of mantra? It's another place to put your consciousness. It's like changing the channel on the TV. It used to be it was only on one channel. It was on one channel. You're pretty stuck, aren't you? I change the channel. Okay? That's what the mantra is. Instead of listening to this garbage that the personal mind has to say, which is just the sum of its learned experiences regurgitating out to try and release the energies, express its fears and anxieties and stuff, you get to watch your breath, count, pay attention to mantra. All these traditional techniques have a foundation, don't they? They make sense. You can modernize them and do them any way you want. But if you don't do something to practice not listening to your mind, you're going to listen to your mind. If you don't do something to figure out how to come back to the couch and not stay fixated on the TV, you're going to stay fixated on the TV, aren't you? All right? So I went about it a weird way, but you now understand spiritual practices. I like to be able to teach the entire spiritual practice and never use the word God. I only used it here when I said God, 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 so I'm not guilty. All right? Why? If you do this, you will come back and tell me about God. So far, all we've talked about is can you get out of having to watch your mind? If you stop watching your mind, you're going to find out that you back there are something very, very special, and that the experience of your own being is the most beautiful thing you've ever experienced. The experience of self, the experience of realization of self. That you are the source of beauty, you're the source of love, you're the source of joy, the passion, everything. That's who you are. That's what you are. But you're staring at a mind that is what I told you it is. A bunch of garbage, all right? A bunch of collection of junk that you've collected. When you stop staring at it, you will start to feel a joy that transcends anything you've ever experienced. And you realize it's coming from me. That's who I am. That's what you are. The source of all joy, the source of love. That's why then go further back and you'll literally start talking about spirit, God, everything they were talking about, everything Christ talked about, everything Buddha talked about. And you got there simply by learning to not stay fixated on the noise your mind is making. And that's what you'll see it as eventually. It's just noise. I can't believe I ever listened to it. It doesn't know what it's talking about. It's very negative. It worries all the time. It's got all these concepts and views and opinions and preferences. A burden to carry, right? And instead, you can just interact with life without that. Doesn't mean you don't use your intellectual mind. When you're interacting with life, there'll be times that you need to figure things out. But they're not about you. You're not trying to figure out how you can be okay, what you want, how you can get what you want, what you don't want, how you can avoid what you don't want. It's never about that. It's about there's somebody sick in front of you. You need to deal with this. What's the closest hospital? You use your mind. Use your mind to study it and use the intellectual. Do you see the difference? Right now you're using your mind to figure out you, aren't you? Figure out how to be okay. And should I get married? And is this the right guy? And what will I do if he turns out to be different like George did? So that gives you a nice foundation as to what the spiritual path is really about. Meher Baba was a great enlightened master, very fully enlightened master. And he had a math formula. It's one of my favorites. Man minus mind equals God. You're going to find out that that's true. Because you are very great. But you who's staring at the mind is not great, not the personal mind. If you learn not to stare at it, you will find out who you are. Christ said the same thing. You must die to be reborn. You have to cease to know yourself the way your mind is telling you and let that go. And then all of a sudden you'll find out who you are. All the teachings are exactly the same once you get to that point. So that gives you a nice foundation. I've been talking more about that little simple technique of meditating lately because some of you come and say, well, how do I meditate? Well, I don't think you should learn it from me. I'm not a teacher of meditation. But if better than nothing, sit down 15 minutes a day, twice a day, and watch your breath. See what happens. I didn't actually finish. If you'll watch and learn to count and succeed in doing it, you're going to find out that you're driving your car and the person in front of you is driving 10 miles an hour below the speed limit and your mind starts going, blah, 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 right? And all of a sudden, you notice you're still breathing. And just spontaneously, you choose to watch your breath and count instead of watching that. And that happens more and more, very naturally. And all of a sudden, you're free of yourself. And you're free to bring your whole being into the moment instead of struggling with the noise of the mind. Very good. Work on these things. Jagrata.